Hey everybody, welcome to the Underwater Photography Show. As always, I am Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And today we're going to go, similar to how we've done with Sony and Nikon, we are going to go down the Canon mirrorless route and talk about our favorite lens choices for Canon full-frame mirrorless shooters. So Alex, if you would like to go first, you are welcome to do so.
That's a good offer. I have shot the R5 a bit underwater, but I've never done a full trip with it. So I'm not the most experienced with this camera, but I have them on just about every workshop I run, so I'm pretty used to seeing them around. But my first choice is a slightly obscure one, and some people might be, is the Canon RF 14-35. And my interest in that lens is specifically using it with the forthcoming FCP. And I just think that that is such an interesting combination. If you watch our FCP video, I'll go into a bit more detail about it. But when you use that lens with the FCP, you have at 14mm a circular fisheye. You have then, if you zoom it into 28mm, a standard fisheye zoom. And then you can still zoom in quite a lot further than 28mm, all the way into 35mm. And because the FCP, a lot of its stretch is at the corners, as you start to zoom in, you almost get a double zooming effect. So you get really quite a tighter view by 35mm. And that's a really awesome wide angle lens to have all three available on one dive. And the fact that with the FCP, you can very easily take off that dome port shade. So you don't have to do the whole dive with an exposed dome port to be able to do circular fisheyes. You can basically forget it even does circular fisheyes, go around shooting as normal. And then when you finally see something that you think, wow, that would be a great circular fisheye, there it is, ready to go. But I haven't finished with that lens yet, because what I really like about that lens is you buy one lens from Canon, you invest in Nauticam FCP, but you can also use that 14-35 behind a standard dome port. And then it's no longer a fisheye lens. It then becomes an ultra wide rectilinear lens with zoom range as well. And that, for one lens with two different front elements on it, one the FCP, the other a dome port, gives you a tremendous diversity. You've got a wide rectilinear, you've got a kind of standard rectilinear wide angle as well, you've got a circular fisheye, a full frame fisheye, and then really quite a lot of zoom in ability with that full frame fisheye as well, all with one lens. So that for me is an absolute, and it's a really, I think we've never had anything like that in underwater photography before. And yeah, it's part of kicking this off is the fact that I think Canon, with the full frame R cameras now, they have such a great lens choice, aided by sort of Nauticam as well with those optics. It's a really, really cool time to be in those cameras. We just need that R5 Mark II, I think, to really realize it. So your choice, Matt. Sorry, I was so excited by that lens option.
I was going to say, maybe I shouldn't let you pick first.
Yeah.
But my first choice might be a little controversial. I'm going to go with the RF 85mm macro. Ironically, it is a lens that I have not shot, and it does not do full 1:1 like most of the standard macro lenses out there. It does 1:2 or 0.5 life size. But for the majority of my shooting, it would fit much better than something like the Canon R5, which we'll get into later, because I prefer larger subjects, frogfish, seahorses, cephalopods, things like that. And often the diving I'm doing for macro is not in the best visibility. Sorry, Naya's scratching at my door if you hear that. Isn't in the best visibility, so being able to get a little bit closer and not have to have the extended working distance like the longer macro lenses would be really useful. It's not an expensive lens, and well,
but it is
relatively
really sharp.
It's not expensive, and it's very, very sharp. So all of that together, that would be my first choice overall if I were investing in the R system for macro. And we'll get into some of my other choices later, but I'll throw it back to you for your next choice.
I fully agree with that. I've been shouting about that lens to the R users that I'm in communication with a lot. And actually, finally, on the last trip, actually, it's someone who was using that lens, and they absolutely love it. And they're like into their super macro. They use it with diopters, and the fact that the lens doesn't go to 1:1 doesn't matter if you put a wet lens on the front of it, because then you can actually, because most of the time you're not, right at the absolute minimum with those things. So it's a super underwater lens, massively underrated. Though, I'm going to stay wide, and I'm going to go with the 8-15mm Canon fisheye. This is a carryover lens from the EOS Canons. So it's an SLR lens, but works very seamlessly on the adapters with the R cameras. There isn't a native R fisheye yet, unless you count the the FCP options. But that is a great lens, really useful. The area that the FCP can't do is for split levels, really. So and also the FCP, because of its prices, not everyone's going to buy one. So the reality is, for everyone else, the 8-15 is an excellent lens. It's a really high quality fisheye lens. It works both with big dome ports and pretty well with small dome ports, pretty excellently with small dome ports. And I think that makes it really versatile. However, I would definitely use it with a big dome port because I'd want it for split level photography particularly. But if you want to buy more than one dome port, of course, you can use it, with some of the smaller dome ports too. So really, really, really useful lens. Plenty of them available secondhand as well now. And a lot of fisheyes haven't had a lot of use. So they're quite a good lens to buy secondhand, as long as you check they're clean, haven't been, in the tropics or anything like that and got fungus or anything in them. They're a really good lens, because a lot of photographers have bought them, used them sparingly, and have basically got rid of them because they find they're not using them. Land photographers, this is. So fisheye is always a good option for secondhand purchases. And the 8-15 is a quality piece of glass.
So my next choice would be the Canon 24-50. So Nikon has an equivalent lens, and this one also, like that one, will work with the WWL series. It'll work with the WACP, and it'll work with the FCP. So assuming you have lots of money and you can buy all of those optics, you could also buy the cheap little Canon RF 24-50 and use it with all of those. So that would, if I were doing it, because money is an object, I would go for the 24-50 and probably something like the WWL-C. So you don't get the full fisheye effect like you would get with the FCP, but you still get very wide. It's a good big animal option. It's very small. And then obviously you have the zoom through from 28, or no, with the WWL-C, you have 24. So you have 24-50. So you could use the entire zoom range, which would be really versatile. And for traveling, it's a tiny optic, which would be nice. And then you could always pair it with an 8-15 or something like that if you really wanted the full fisheye on the wide end. But if money were no object, I think the 24-50 with the WWL or the FCP or the FCP would be a really cool combination.
Yeah, no, it's another, the Canon range just suits. It's a really great lens range at the moment for underwater photography. It's really come of age in the last sort of 6 months with a few extra additions, both by Canon and in this case by Nauticam as well. I think, I think that'll also probably be for a lot of people the perfect starter lens as well. If you're just getting into things and you want maximum versatility, plenty of future proofing, 24-50 WWLC, not too expensive, not too big. You start to get really into it. You can add an FCP and use that same lens with an FCP. You can add a 14-35, buy a dome port, and have the options we talked about earlier. That's a great way into it. That's a really good suggestion. I'm going to stay absolutely traditional Canon and go RF 100. The Canon 100mm have been exemplary macro lenses for decades now. They are super sharp, just unbelievable image quality, workhorse professional quality lenses. And from what I hear, the RF one is just even better than they've been before, and just absolutely stunning. You've shot it more than I have. I'm sure you've got opinions on it, Matt.
Ironically, we didn't choose it as any of our first selections, but it is the best macro lens I have ever used. It's fast. It's so sharp. And one of the things that I really like about it is, you could shoot older DSLR lenses wide open. The RF 100 is razor sharp and loses no sharpness, even shot at f2.8, which is really cool, because then it opens up some new imaging opportunities. But the overall image quality, and it's fast. So it's really fast. I've shot it on the R5 and the R7 and the R100. It's fantastic on all of them. And it is an expensive lens, which could put some people off. So the other option is to go with the older EF version, which is still a really nice lens. If money's no object, get the RF 100, because you won't be disappointed with it. And I mean, the detail is crazy, the sharpness is crazy, the overall, it's just a phenomenal macro lens. And I've said it before in some of my reviews, that lens alone has almost convinced me to go to Canon a couple times,
Oh,
just because of how sharp it is.
yeah, and on that point, we're at number 4, I think, in our picks now, and we're talking about like one of the best lenses you can use underwater, and it really
Yeah.
shows how good the. I do think, yeah, the Canon cameras just they need that R5 Mark II to be a good camera, and they'll suddenly go, I think, to being probably the most desirable system. Even though right now there's so many people who are just like, should I choose a Z8 or an A7
Yeah.
R5? And suddenly that R5 Mark II is going to be completely in that conversation because the lens selection for Canon is awesome. So that was my pick. So you've got to choose again.
So my last one would be actually the old Canon EF f 2.5 50 mil macro.
I don't know that one.
It
So
also only does 1 to 2, and it's ancient, but it works really well on the adapter, and it is shockingly sharp. One of my good friends uses it here locally, and the first time he told me he was using it, I'm like, it's old, it might be okay. It's ridiculous. It's very fast. It costs like $70, and it's so sharp. And for a lot of the stuff, if you're diving in murkier conditions, like a lot of the stuff here, we don't have great visibility. And if you're shooting larger subjects, again, like frogfish or seahorses or things like that, that let you get close, it's a really nice lens for that, because you don't need to zoom you don't zoom, you don't need to focus all the way in 1 to 1. I've actually found behind flat ports it does better than like the Nikon 60 does, especially in the edges where you get a lot of the chromatic aberration smearing with
yeah,
the 60 mil. The Canon, it has some of that, but it's handled much better than the 60 mil from Nikon, and I would like to see it shot behind one of those curved, like semi-dome macro ports, because I think it would be phenomenal behind one of those. So hopefully at some point I can figure out a way to do that. But for the price, you may as well just get it because it's going to be useful at some point. It's a really nice lens, and complements the 100 or the 85 really nicely.
you were a little bit laggy through that. Your voice
Sorry.
came through fine, but yeah, your face and did probably most people listen to this in their car or something. Everyone's been telling us they just like listening to the audio of these, so no one noticed at all. But yeah, your internet connection is circa the 50 mil macro lens, I think, in age today. So,
Right.
but that's a
Probably.
fantastic suggestion because I think it is we started with money no object 1435 with FCP, but yeah, it's great to finish off with something like that which no one's really chasing but actually is a tremendous underwater lens, and it shows that it's all about the suitability to underwater photography that really makes these lenses sing. So yeah, and I would just conclude what a great potential lineup there is from Canon. There's so much versatility there, in a relatively small number of really high quality lenses. I
Yeah.
think that the R system is just, and I love the R3. I mean, I think that's a lovely camera. I just yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's I think Canon are about to like bounce back in a massive way in everyone's consciousness in underwater photography terms.
I if the RF mount were opened up so you could shoot the 13 mil on Canon, I might lean that way just because everything else is so sweet. And I haven't shot an R3 underwater, but I've handled one a bit on land.
Mm. I'm the
Oh
same. I've not
man,
used one underwater. Yeah.
it is such a sweet camera, and I mean the resolution doesn't matter too much to me, and I'm assuming the R1 is going to be that but better, whenever that comes out too. So
Yeah.
um, it's a shame they won't open up the mount to other options, but they don't really need to. I understand why they're not, and like you said, if 13 mil aside, everything else works fantastically with what they have already. And if the R5 2 and the R1 come out and are beastly, you can see a huge swing back to Canon for underwater shooters.
Yeah. I think quite a lot of R5 users or R users are using kind of carryover 1635s and things from their EOS cameras. And yeah, I think one thing I would say is really look at what's available now. I hope some of those people watch this video Nothing wrong with using your old 1635, but there's some really great stuff out there, and I think you can really transform the usability of those cameras with some of the optics we've run through here. So I think that's a pretty good place for us to wrap up. We'll be back again soon with another episode of the Underwater Photography Show. But until then, see you soon. Bye.
Thanks for watching, guys.